Welcome back to the channel, guys. It's Real SD Outdoors. Today, we're going to be going over my top baits for the month of May here in South Dakota. Let's hop on into it. The first bait that I want to go over is a 6-inch Megabass Magdraft. This is one of those baits that I like to have tied on all year, but I feel like it thrives more in the spring months. Fish are a little lethargic moving up into the more shallow water. I think it's important to be throwing a big bait to kind of call them in from that deeper water. And I feel like this time of the year, since the bait fish are starting to move up, getting more active along with other game fish like perch and crappie and bluegill, if you match the hatch or go even bigger profile, you can really key in on some of those bigger bites and kind of weed out the smaller stuff. So I do always like to have a dark sleeper or a Magdraft or some sort of swim bait tied on, depending on what those fish are doing and how the bait fish are moving through the lake. So that's our first bait, the 6-inch Megabass Magdraft. Now, with all the wind that we've been having lately, the wind, the clouds, even the cold temperatures with the cold water temps, I've been relying on an underspin. Always catches fish for me right out of the gate. This specific one is the 3/8 ounce bluegill pattern underspin, top hook underspin by 6 cents. And I just have it paired up with a silver and white 5-inch paddle tail with a little bit of chartreuse dye on the end. I'm not sure if you guys can quite pick that up or not. But this bait right here has been a big player. In the late weeks or late days of April, I started fishing this thing really heavy. And I know that it'll transition into the month of May as those bass push up into shallow water and start to make beds. I like to fish this bait on 12 to 15 pound fluorocarbon, steady retrieve bait. Sometimes you can add action to it if you want to. I've had them hit it when I pause it, cast it out there, start to reel it in, pause it, reel it in, pause it. I've had them hit it on that style of retrieve as well. But this bait is definitely in my top 5 because it is a fish catcher all year around. The only time I don't really fish this is when I transition from an underspin to a swim jig in the summer months. And a swim jig is fished relatively the same way, close to an underspin. They both put fish on the bank. One of my favorite baits for spring bass fishing here in South Dakota. The next bait that I want to talk about is the 3/8 ounce Evo Tungsten Chatterbait by Z-Man. I've been seeing these baits advertised all over the place and finally decided to pick a couple up. They only come in at about $9.99 at most local places. This one is the Bama Craw color, I believe, and it is the 3/8 ounce. And as a trailer, I have the 6 cents Juggle Minnow, one of my favorite trailers on chatterbaits. The tail, I feel like, adds more action when you're just straight retrieving than unlike a craw or a paddle tail. And all of their Evo chatterbaits have an extra flash on the blade themselves. But the thing that sold me the most on this bait was when you cast it out there, immediately once it hits the water, it starts vibrating or chattering immediately. There's no downtime at all. You can cast it out there, start burning it back to the bank right away, and that thing is already going to town, just chattering along. And I really feel like that has more drawing power than some of the other like original chatterbaits or the jackhammer or some of the other bladed jigs out there on the market. So I feel like this one stands out because of its immediate action, and with it being tungsten, I can bump it across structure, rocks, timber, other structure that's in the water, and feel it getting hung up and kind of pop the rod and keep it over the structure. This is one of those baits that I'll fish in 8 mile an hour wind, or I'll fish all the way up into 20, 25 mile an hour wind, even up into the low 30s. I've had this bait catch fish all year. It's one of those baits that I normally don't pick up around the spring, but this season it kind of earned its way into my top 5 just for the sole fact that every time I pick it up, whether it's a lava craw pattern, bright red, or a more subtle red bluegill pattern, the fish around here just destroy it. And like I said, I feel like that trailer plays a big role in it drawing in so many fish and from so far away. So that's our third bait. My next bait is the Sleeper Gill by Megabass. This is a bait that I don't really throw around a lot. I feel like I should throw it around a little bit more. This bait is going to play a big role in just floating along the bank, throwing it up into beds or along the bank, and just dragging it back somewhat like a jig. I do really like the size profile on this compared to the 3/4 ounce dark sleeper. I do like some of the 3/8 and ½ ounce versions of the dark sleeper. Those are generally tied on or nearby during the spawn or the early months of spring. This bait, I'm going to be throwing it on 10 to 12 pound fluorocarbon, kind of just dragging it around structure and along weed lines, picking high percentage areas and pitching it up there and just working it back like a jig, but kind of adding in a more swimming motion as you would with a swim jig or the vibrating jig that we just went over. Flying through the baits here. The next bait that I want to talk about is a spinnerbait. This is one of my favorite spinnerbaits. This is the Megabass SV3 spinnerbait. I have just a 3.5 inch paddle tail on the back. I will admit, most times I like to run my spinnerbaits with no trailers. Once this thing hits the water, it's already got, you don't have to turn the reel at all to get it to start, moving the blades. This bait, I do like to pop, so I'll cast it out there all the way, let it sink for about 5 to 10 seconds, and start reeling it in. Once I reel it in for a couple seconds, I'll pop the rod once or twice, let it sink for a second, and then start the retrieve again. That's how I normally get bit on spinner baits. You can just cast them out there and straight retrieve. It's a great way to learn spinner baits. One of my top 5 baits across the whole board in general. This is the Hot Tiger pattern, and I love the design and the head shape of these spinner baits. I feel like they cast further, they come through the water in the cover a little easier, and these hooks are actually really good hooks. So I'm new to this color. I normally use their white and chartreuse color, but this one I'm going to give a go and see if I can't catch something on it. On to the last 2 baits. The reason why I threw 1 extra bait in there was because I like to throw a bigger and a smaller profile swim jig. This one comes in at a little over 5 inches, and this one comes in at a little under 4 inches with the jig and the trailer. This one being a bright color, I've had a lot of good luck throwing this thing in really windy conditions. I will throw this thing out there and I will just pop twice, retrieve, pop twice, retrieve, repeat that process. And I caught pretty good numbers right once the water opened up with this bait. All the baits that I'm talking about I have linked down in the description below, or I will throw them up on screen so you guys can find them afterwards. This bait comes with a 3/0 hook and weighs a 1/4 ounce, and I'm using the Crush City Mare 3.5 inch swim bait on the back of this one. Really light weed guard. This one, you don't have to set the hook very hard to cast it out there, and once they hit it, you just kind of lean into it, let them do the work, and you kind of just set the hook on them. So that's been one of my go-tos lately, the smaller profile. The bigger profile comes with a 5/0 hook, and this is a 3/8 ounce version. It still has the light weed guard, but the profile is a little bit longer. And around here, when we are fishing for pike or bass, sometimes when they're not keying in on that smaller bait fish, or their bait fish aren't active in the lakes yet, throw the bigger profiles kind of to just get something out there and get it in front of them. I caught probably 5 or 6 pike off of this bait last week and one pretty decent bass. So I know that this bait will come through. It's just a matter of time. We got to get a little bit bigger bait fish in the lake first and let the water warm up and let them push up shallow. And then we can really start throwing these things out there and burning and cover some water with the swim jig or any of the top 5 baits that I just talked about. Good time to get out as an angler with the beginning of the season just starting and the water temps being in that 50 to 55 degree range. We're about 10 degrees off, and the bass are going to start getting up shallow, cleaning their beds off. So, with that being said, these are my top 5 baits for the month of May in South Dakota. I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll catch you guys on the next one.